I would now like to welcome Brent back up to the stage for a strategic update to the membership. As chair of the board of the directors, I can attest the commitment of Brent to the Dairyland members. Since joining Dairyland nearly 5 years ago, he has been an innovative leader and shared many ideas to ensure Dairyland evolves as our industry and consumers change. I now ask Brent to share his address, which highlights today's annual meeting theme, Seize the Day and Shape the Future.
I was just able to get untangled from my mic. I forgot that it was interwoven with my tie. So again, one more round of applause for Guy. That was very enjoyable. All right. Well, I'm standing between us and lunch, and so we'll be very pithy with our words, and then we'll have some questions at the end. So be thinking about questions you want to ask as I go through this. First slide, I always sort of focus on our mission, vision, and shared values. All these drive to 3 words: being safe, reliable, and affordable for our members. Also want to start with thanks and gratitude for our members for their support, teammates at Dairyland for all their hard work, the board of directors for their leadership and resources, and the Dairyland Managers Association for their advice. As I think about our mission, a big part of that is concern for community, and those are the communities that you live in, that you provide energy for, and other services as well. And that's a key mission for us and our board. So 3 years ago, we started the Cooperative Day of Service, where our teams and your teams combine in 5 or 6 areas of our system and go to work for the community. Last year, 200 volunteers. We look forward to a really safe and successful Cooperative Day of Service, but these are picking spots in your area that need help, whether they be not-for-profits or wildlife areas, but it's been really, really important for us and great engagement with your teams as well. We're adding a scholarship next year to go along with our $1,000 that we donate each year to a nonprofit in each of your areas. We'll be adding a $500 scholarship to go along with your scholarship program, and that'll be throughout our service territory with our members and our power supply customers. This map is always changing, and you'll now see this map and recognize why we have Oconto and Norris here as a special guest. Beginning in 2026, mid-2026, they will be power supply customers. They'll be adding 100 megawatts to the system. So thank you again for trusting us with your power supply. If you're not as familiar with the Dairyland Cooperative, I'll give you some numbers. So we have 500 employees. We have about 400 substations. Those are yours and ours combined. About $1.6 billion in total assets and 3,700 miles of transmission line, and growing to 3,900 miles over the course of the next several years, and I'll talk about that at some length. And speaking of transmission, I'll talk a little bit about some of the accomplishments from last year. Cardinal Hickory Creek is a project that we've been talking about for my 5 years here, and then at least 5 years before I got here. That line was energized after a decade of work. It went in service in September of 2024. For us, it was about a $60 million investment, and with the energizing of that line, that $60 million, the cost has been recovered from MISO, and now you are earning a rate of return every year on that line. And that's a different system than building our own transmission within our system. This is called MISO designated projects. That means we get full cost recovery and rate of return. And I'll talk about the importance of that in the next few slides. We also received over $600 million in grants. Big one was the New Era grant. We had an opportunity to host President Biden. There was some concern with the transition from the Biden administration to the Trump administration that the money might be paused or taken back. It was paused for 90 days, but it's been now re-supported by the Trump administration. There's still challenges there. There's still potential for that money to still go away. There are several projects that we're doing without there's that support. If we get the support, they'll be even more economical. So again, it's sitting in a pretty good place right now. We're obligated, we're moving through the process, but as we talked about with Guy, the big beautiful bill and reconciliation, there's still some risk attached to that. We also started 2025 with a nearly 1% average rate reduction. We're already seeing upward pressure on that. April mentioned that in 2024 we had lower LMPs, we had lower gas prices. LMPs are the market price. This year we're seeing higher gas and higher market prices. So we've already implemented a couple of power cost adjustments. So at the end of the year we'll see where we end up, but again, we do have variability, so even the accomplishment of having a lower rate can be challenged each year. We were able to maintain our strong credit rating. We've added Oconto and Norris, which I've mentioned before. The Dairyland member and Dairyland economic teams have facilitated the addition of 27 new projects and 20 megawatts. We completed the wholesale power contract task force and rate study. And I mentioned the $655 million of grants through various programs. So I've talked a bit about the past. Now we're going to kind of move in what does our future look like and how we're trying to shape that future. So we want to shape it. We don't want to be shaped by it. And the discussion with Guy and sort of the political vagaries out there that we can't answer just yet, they create some risk. But as we think about the success we've accomplished, it's really taken 10 years to become an overnight success. Cardinal Hickory Creek took 13 years. And when I talk about our long-range transmission plan, that's going to play out over the next decade. When I talk about how we're transforming our power supply, that will occur over the next decade. As we look to shape our future, it doesn't come risk-free. It doesn't come without challenges. Power supply is at a critical crossroads. Expansion of renewables, we've never seen anything like it in the MISO's footprint, and particularly in MISO North. We see increasing demands, and yet plant retirements are continuing. And then I just talked about annual variability of market prices. What we've seen at the end of last year and the very beginning of this year, a ton of solar coming in, holding daytime prices down. Then over the last 2 months, we've seen more cloudy days than expected, less wind than expected. Renewables are a really important part of our portfolio. And so we're going to continue to develop those. But as a fuel supply, it may be free, but it's certainly less predictable than we like. And then so what will shape us in the future? What will your G&T look like? So the first thing we have to focus on is power supply diversification. And it's really about avoiding the potential challenges that we've seen at the beginning of this year. If you go back to 23, we saw some challenges. Being beholden to market prices without a diverse portfolio is going to create challenges for us. So these 3 light bulbs take us through a journey from 1999 through today and then into the future. So just in 1999, 98% coal was our fuel source. Right now, we're sitting just about a third, a third, and a third when we think about coal, gas, and renewables. If we look ahead to 2035, there's some uncertainty, but we could see ourselves in a situation where we're a third natural gas, and 2/3 renewable. And what would drive that would be, as we sit today, the EPA Rule 111 Delta is still in place. That will cause the closure of coal plants in just a few years. And so as we build out that renewable platform, we have to think about having baseload and reliable sources that can dispatch quickly up and down with the renewable energy. So this is the power supply direction. This is how we're going to achieve it. We sit here today with just a little bit less than 400 megawatts of nameplate capacity in renewables. When we complete New Era, we'll have 1,374 megawatts. So more than tripling our renewable footprint. When you go back to the previous slide, that's how we get to 64% renewables. And what we see in the market, when the renewables are up, wind's blowing, the sun's shining, We have very, very good market pricing. But to back up this renewable energy, we have to have dependable and dispatchable generation. So we currently have 2 coal plants. Weston 4, we have limited control, and we're a 30% owner, but we don't operate the facility. Natural gas, we have RockGen Energy Center and Elk Mound. RockGen is the kind of plant that we want to continue to develop, build, or buy. Those are plants that have lots of capacity that can move up and down with the wind and the solar. So we got a gap. We've got a plan for renewables. We also have a plan for dispatchable. We're looking at potential new resources, whether they be us owning them or through long-term power purchase agreements. But you're going to see a significant shift both in our power supply and then next, our transmission system. And part of what we'll look at for the future is we've got to continue to look at what that next baseload dispatchable resource is. Very likely it'll be nuclear in the long term. But the first bullet kind of says where we're at. We're cautious, we're watching. I know we're probably all aware of the president's executive order on nuclear. Says all the right things. But when you're in a situation like Dairyland, we have to watch and see if a small modular reactor can be built cost effectively. And once that's done, then I think the floodgates may open. But right now we're taking a patient, waiting, and watching position, which I think is the only way we can effectively manage our risk. But we have a team that's positioned to take action on nuclear as it moves forward. Then talking about transmission, I talked about Cardinal and Hickory Creek and the $60 million investment, how that's paying you a rate of return each year. So we have 2 other sets of MISO projects. Tranche 1 is from Alma Blair and Wabasha relocation. You can see it on the map. Those are the bluish and the pink one. And then Tranche 2.1 is the yellow dashed line. That's where we're partnered with Grid Alliance. These projects total $635 million. So we're 10x greater than the Cardinal Hickory Creek. And again, we get full cost recovery on these projects, and we get a rate of return as we move forward through the project. And I'll show you a graph about what this does to our long-term rate projections. And I do want to give a special thanks to Grid Alliance. We mentioned them earlier. The project that we're partnered with them on is called Maribel. It goes from Marion to Bell Center. It's 139 miles. It's 765 kV, so it'll be one of the largest in the upper Midwest and among the largest in the United States. It's also got an underbuild of 160, and it's in a current right-of-way. Planned to be in service in 2034, and will begin open houses here in 2025. So if the question's being asked, this is a big investment, and boy, it sure is. Why would we do it? What's the purpose of this? And how does cost recovery and rate of return actually play out? So we've shown you 2 lines here. The red line, the upper line, is our rate forecast without the long-range transmission plan. The green line is our rate trajectory with long-range transmission. And so as we look at this, it not only provides downward pressure in the near term with cost recovery, but it also provides massive rate relief in future years. And this is really focused on our mission of affordability and reliability. So I'm really appreciative of the board supporting this, membership supporting it. This is going to transform our business from an economic perspective for decades to come. So I've talked about power supply diversification. I've talked about transmission diversification. Let's talk about the reliability challenges. So this is a map from NERC. This is updated from last year. And MISO's sitting there in red. And red means we've got a high likelihood of rolling blackouts. They don't use the phrase rolling blackout, but that's the simplest way to look at it. So we have coal plants retiring, but we also have coal plants that are being told to continue to operate. So there's some good and some bad in that mix. We're seeing increase in load, just looking at our load and how it's growing. Where is all that energy going to come from? It's not going to come from renewables. Renewables are that daytime energy or when the wind's blowing, but it's not the reliable, dispatchable energy we need through gas plants, nuclear plants, and coal plants. So this is the challenge in front of us. And this is kind of looking at it pictorially. When we look at winter January 1 through 7th in 2025, so not too in the far distant past, this is what the day looked like. The lavender color is everything that's not renewable. The bottom part, solar plus wind, is about 15.8%. We're not going to be able to get from 15.8% to 100% renewable in the time frame we hear some people talk about, 2035, 2040. But there's something positive in the renewables on this slide. The solar is at least doubled from this graph I showed you last year. And that's not a bad thing. Lots of sun during the day and lots of solar energy in the day does a great job of holding prices down. That's why having a dependable, dispatchable power plant like RockGen that can come up and meet those needs is so critical. The other challenge behind our gas plants is gas supply. RockGen does not have a permanent gas supply. When we're in the winter, residents take precedence, it loses the gas supply, and it could run on fuel oil, which is not great. So as we look at new resources, we're looking for resources that have gas supply. So I've talked about how we're changing our transmission portfolio, how we're changing our power portfolio, and we've got a list of things we have to do. Some are checked off as completed, some are still in flight. So to address the challenges, we closed G3. It was an expensive plant. We purchased RockGen to replace it with a capacity unit. We're currently pursuing additional resources for capacity. We're going to execute our current grant programs to expand our renewable portfolio. I've talked about the transmission expansion, which will actually give us the financial strength to do the energy resource development that we need to do. We've secured the grants. We need to continue adding renewable resources as they become cost effective. And then the key to all this, executing this entire strategy, is having sustained financial strength. And that's the foundation for everything that we're doing for you. So what does that future look like? So here I'm going to look just back a little bit to show you the past and what we're visioning for the future. So this is our cost competitiveness in a graph. The lower you are, the more competitive you are. If you're in the lower green band, you're in the top quartile of competitive costs. In 2019, we were in the third quartile, just a little bit worse than middle of the pack. Over 2 years, we worked ourselves close to the top quartile. And for the last 3 years, we've now been in the top quartile. We're projecting to stay there. This is an interesting KPI because it only gets updated once per year. And so here coming up in later June, July, we'll have last year's data and see where we ended in 2024. And then if we look at wholesale rates against inflation and against a regional competitive investor-owned utility. The top line is inflation from 2019 through our long-range forecast of 2031. The middle line, the shorter line, is that investor-owned utility and their rate trajectory. And then the bottom line, the green line, is our rates plus our forecast. This matches the slide that I showed on the long-range transmission plan. So as we shape our future, as we move forward, and we think about safe, reliable, and affordable, this slide is that affordability. A few things are going to change as well. So here's what our revenue growth looks like. And as we get revenue from outside sources, whether it be long-range transmission plan or bringing on new wholesale power supply customers, that takes our overhead costs and spreads it out over a greater base. So I think I'll give you a list of takeaways from this conversation. I covered a lot of ground. Could have spent 2 hours talking about it. But I want to talk about what we are and where we're going to be. So what we are right now is financially strong. We're competitive. We're growing. We continue to jump on grants as they become available. I would say they're not as available in this administration as they were in the last. Expanding our transmission. And it isn't expanding the transmission in our system, which we're still doing, but these are the big long-range transmission plan, rate of returning, cost recovery projects. And then we're modifying and diversifying our portfolio. We are not going to survive as the Dairyland of 1999. We are going to not just survive, but we're going to thrive as a diverse, nimble G&T. What we will do going forward is we're going to achieve a zero-incident workplace. That's where safety is our number one priority, and safe companies are successful companies. We're going to continue to expand transmission. We're going to continue to modify and diversify our power supply as things are needed. Things will change. Today is different than 5 years ago when I joined. It is different than it was last year. It's different than it was the year before. And for us, we have to do more resource planning. We need to work better with our members to understand what your resource planning is, and that's where it's a team effort. And we're going to move the mission forward. We're currently serving 750,000 humans. We want to get that up to a million. I notice the slide says 1 million members. That's a good goal. I would say that's a stretch goal, but we'll try to achieve that as well. So again, we don't want to just keep up. We need to move ahead of the pace of change and control our destiny. These are some slides from the cooperative days of service, from DC trips. You'll see some of your folks on these slides as well. So thank you very much. I appreciate all the support you've provided us. And now we'll move into a Q&A. All right, the executive team can join us.